Good morning, friends. Well, so nice to have you here in Catholic TV studios, and so nice to have so many people who are watching us. For those who are in warm climates, we are very envious of you. Well, folks, today the gospel centers around the birth of John the Baptist, but it's probably worth of us remembering how this birth came about, because Zechariah is very much featured in today's gospel. And in today's gospel, as we're hearing this story, we want to go back to how this started. We might remember last week as we listened to the gospel how John the Baptist, how Zechariah, John's father, was in the Holy of Holies in the temple. It had been his year, and he had been cast from lot to go inside there and to do his duties inside there. And he went inside there. And do you remember who appeared to him? The angel. The angel appeared to him. And the angel told him that that his wife was going to conceive a son. And he was to name Emmanuel. God is with us. And do you recall what was Zechariah's reaction to that? Skepticism. Or as my father said, wow. Yes, as we recall, both Zechariah and Elizabeth were older in age. Wow was probably more the likely reaction to the whole thing, but certainly it was layered with skepticism. Now, I would have to say with some common sense that Zechariah, in saying that, it is something that most of us would have responded, isn't it? However, let's take a step back here. As I recall, Zechariah, to have been chosen for that, had to have been a pretty holy man. They just didn't let anybody go inside there. For him to be in that priestly class to get inside there in the first place, he had to be a man who lived a very holy life. And in this case, if he did, he would remember the commandment, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods, and you shall love me with all your mouth, with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength. In other words, you'll love me with everything that you have, and that you'll believe in me as a result with everything you have. What happens after Zechariah goes off there and kind of rebels and questions the angel? What does the angel do? Poof! You're not going to be talking again. Wow, holy smokes. I got to tell you something. Poor Zechariah. He issues this one question, which I thought was a kind of reasonable question, and he loses his voice. That had to be a very hard thing. I mean, certainly it would have been a divine punishment, wouldn't it have been? And why was God punishing him? I mean, he was just using his kind of mind, asking what we would think is a reasonable question. But it was taken from him to get his attention, that he was chosen. Zechariah was chosen for an incredible thing. When Zechariah found out what the angel was telling him, that his son was going to proclaim the coming of the Messiah, it shouldn't have been a questioning point. If there was a question, it should have been, why me? I mean, think about the incredible gift that was given to him in that moment. It was incredible. He was going to be the son of the Messiah. His name would then go down in all of history of humanity. And his response was to have a lack of faith and to ask that question. Well, that can happen to all of us, can't it? It can. Zechariah, it is amazing for a man who was so holy and was so prayerful and so connected with God that he had that moment in which he questioned God. We have those moments too, don't we? Don't we? We pray a lot, and we get to Mass, we go to confession, we love God with much of our heart, much of our mind, and much of our soul, but there's always that little bit that makes us question. Something happens inside our life. Something goes wrong inside our life. Well, my friends, we want to remember the story of Zechariah. Zechariah had that moment, and as a result, what happened? His lips were closed. And it was obvious to him at that moment that he had disappointed God in his response. We hear today's gospel, and then when asked what name he's to given, Elizabeth says John. It's not in the family tree, and so it should, by their culture, not have happened at all. It was scandalous, in fact. And so what do? They go to the husband for the final word. Sound familiar? Even today, they go to the husband, and the husband writes on the chalkboard, "He will be named John!" Exclamation point. I don't know if they had one back then, but he was getting the point across, wasn't he? Sure he was. His name will be John. And then his lips were opened, and then he gave God great glory. Let us take this story today in this Advent, as we are people awaiting the coming of the Lord, to remember the Lord expects everything from us. Let us ask God give us the grace so that we give him nothing less than all of that.